Okay, welcome everyone. All right, we've got this stack of sources you send over sitting right here.
Mhm.
Articles, reports, notes. It's quite a range, isn't it?
It really is just a snapshot of, well, everything happening all at once.
Yeah, covering European politics, US law, big global business deals, even a pretty wild geomagnetic storm and some serious natural disasters too.
Definitely. So our job here in this deep dive is basically to unpack all this,
Right.
pull out the most important bits, and sort of connect the dots for you.
Exactly. Think of it as your high-speed tour through the key takeaways in this stack. We're just going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's kick off with politics and international affairs. Some pretty big shifts highlighted in the sources here.
First up, yeah, that Polish presidential election.
Fascinating result and incredibly close.
Really razor thin.
Hmm.
The sources confirm Karol Nawrocki won,
Okay.
but only just 50.89% for him against Rafał Trzaskowski's 49.11%.
Wow. And Iraqi, he's described as a conservative historian, former head of the Institute of National Remembrance.
That's him. And his win, well, it's seen as potentially challenging Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government.
Tusk being more pro-EU, right?
Exactly. And the key thing here is the president's veto power. With Nawrocki as president, given the current parliament, you could see some real legislative gridlock.
So even with Tusk's coalition in charge of the government, the presidency could be a significant bloc.
Potentially, yeah.
How might this play out internationally? What do the sources suggest?
Well, it could strain Poland's relationship with the EU,
Hmm.
especially around things like judicial reforms, democratic standards, that kind of thing.
And foreign policy?
His nationalist stance might also influence things like policy towards Ukraine or NATO,
Yeah.
a potential shift in priorities there.
Okay, so key figures are Nawrocki, Trzaskowski, Tusk, and there was that note about U.S. President Trump endorsing Nawrocki.
That's mentioned, yes. And reactions internationally were pretty divided.
How so?
Well, you had far-right leaders like Orbán in Hungary, Le Pen in France, celebrating it. But then EU officials were reportedly voicing concerns. Worries about democratic progress, reforms may be stalling.
Okay, makes sense. Let's pivot now across the Atlantic. A big U.S. legal development from the Supreme Court.
Right. The court issued a ruling allowing the termination of the humanitarian parole program.
And this program, it sounds like it was pretty significant in scope.
It really was. The sources say it allowed over 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela to live temporarily in the U.S.
Okay, over 500,000 people.
Yeah. It was a Biden administration initiative, mainly responding to humanitarian crises.
And its termination aligns with President Trump's stricter immigration approach.
That seems to be the connection drawn, yes.
So what are the immediate impacts? What happens now?
Well, the most direct consequence is that hundreds of thousands of people are now potentially at risk of deportation.
Wow.
The sources flag this could cause, serious humanitarian issues and maybe diplomatic friction with their home countries.
Besides the justices and the migrants, President Trump is obviously central here. How did different groups react to the ruling itself?
Predictably, immigration advocates were highly critical. They raised human rights concerns.
And on the other side,
Supporters tended to frame it as upholding the rule of law, national sovereignty.
okay, let's shift again from U.S. legal matters to U.K. defense strategy. A major overhaul announced.
A very significant one, yes. The plan includes building up to 12 new nuclear-powered attack submarines.
12. That's a lot.
It is. And also investing £15 billion in the nuclear warhead program.
So that sounds like a real change in direction. The reports call it a move towards war-fighting readiness.
That's the language used, yeah. The context given points to this being part of a wider defense review,
Driven by global threats.
specifically mentioning increased tension with Russia. And it's also noted these subs fall under the AUKUS Security Pact.
Right, with the U.S. and Australia.
Correct.
So what's the intended outcome of all this investment? What are they hoping to achieve?
The stated aims are pretty clear. Boost the UK's deterrence capabilities and reaffirm commitment to NATO and global security.
And it's a big boost for UK defense manufacturing, too, I imagine.
Absolutely. A significant domestic investment. Key players mentioned are the PM, the Ministry of Defense, and the IUK's partners.
How did the announcement go down?
Allies seem to have welcomed it, seeing it as strengthening collective defense.
But there were criticisms.
Yes, concerns were raised about the sheer level of spending and also the potential, risk of fueling arms races.
Yeah. Okay. Right, let's move from these high-level strategies to some specific incidents on the ground, ones with broader security echoes. First, something deeply disturbing out of Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, the sources detail a terror attack at a pro-Israel rally there.
What happened exactly?
A man apparently attacked people with a makeshift flamethrower, shouted "Free Palestine," and injured 8 people.
And the rally itself, the context was important. It was for the release of hostages in Gaza.
Precisely. The FBI is reportedly treating it as a targeted act of terrorism. And the sources connect this to a worrying rise in tensions, and specifically anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S.
What kind of impact does an attack like this have beyond the immediate victims?
Well, it definitely heightens fears about domestic terrorism and raises anxiety about safety for minority communities.
You'd expect increased security at public events after something like this.
Very likely, yes. Figures like FBI Director Kash Patel, Boulder Police are involved in the response.
And the reaction from community groups?
Jewish organizations condemned it strongly as anti-Semitic terrorism. Authorities promised thorough investigations, more protection.
Okay. Now, from a targeted attack like that to widespread disorder, Paris saw major riots after a football win.
Yes, after Paris Saint-Germain PSG won the Champions League title, celebrations turned violent.
Turned very violent, it seems. The reports mention deaths.
Tragically, yes. 2 deaths reported, 192 injuries, and over 500 arrests.
Wow. It was a huge historic win for PSG, 5-0 over Inter Milan, but things clearly got out of hand.
Severely. The sources describe clashes with police, lots of vandalism, just general public disorder.
What's the fallout from that? What discussions are happening?
It's prompted a lot of talk about crowd control, naturally, public safety, how to manage events like this.
Yeah, lessons learned, hopefully.
You'd hope so. Paris police, the French Interior Ministry, they're all involved in the response and the investigations now. Authorities condemn the violence, of course.
All right, let's switch focus now to business and the economy. There's an interesting piece on how political decisions are affecting private equity.
Yeah, a Bain & Company report highlighted in the sources. It suggests President Trump's recent tariff announcements have disrupted global PE deal-making.
Disrupted how much? Is it noticeable?
It seems so. The report actually projects a 16% decline in PE deal volume in Q2 2025 compared to Q1.
16%. That's quite a drop in just one quarter.
Yeah.
Why do tariffs hit PE deals like that?
Well, the basic issue is uncertainty. Tariffs create unpredictability in international markets,
Makes sense.
which makes it harder to value assets, especially for deals crossing borders. So investors get cautious, activity slows down.
Right. So beyond fewer deals closing, what are the wider potential effects?
Could mean reduced investment overall, deals getting delayed, investors just being more wary.
And that could eventually impact growth, jobs?
Potentially, yeah, in related industries. The report links this to uncertainty around Trump's trade policies, and you hear business leaders expressing concern, asking for clearer guidelines.
Okay. Now, shifting to a specific corporate deal, a big one in the pharma sector.
That's the Sanofi acquisition of Blueprint Medicines. Sanofi's French, Blueprint is U.S.-based biotech.
And the price tag is pretty hefty.
Up to $9.5 billion. It's a major move for Sanofi.
What's the strategy behind it? Why Blueprint?
Sanofi's looking to expand its portfolio, specifically in rare immunological diseases. That's the main driver mentioned.
And Blueprint specializes in that area.
Exactly. They're known for treatments for systemic mastocytosis, that's a rare blood disorder, and they have other therapies in the pipeline too.
So this is a big strategic bet for Sanofi.
Their largest recent deal, apparently, shows a real focus on building up their specialty care side.
What does this tell us about the pharma industry more broadly?
Well, it certainly boosts Sanofi's position in biotech, and it could speed up new treatments for rare diseases, which is a good news.
And consolidation.
It points to that continuing trend, yeah. Big pharma buying up innovative, smaller biotech firms. Investors seem to like it. Blueprint stock jumped quite a bit.
Okay, final shift now. Let's look up at the sky and then back down to Earth. A celestial event first.
Right, the geomagnetic storm. NOAA issued a G4 watch that's severe.
Triggered by something from the sun.
Yeah, a coronal mass ejection, a CME, back on May 31st, came from a specific sunspot, AR 4100.
And the result was pretty spectacular viewing for a lot of people.
Absolutely stunning. Widespread auroras, the northern lights and southern lights.
Visible much further south than usual.
Reports mention places like Alabama, Northern California seeing the aurora borealis. And southern Queensland in Australia saw the aurora australis. It was intense, just one step below the top G5 level.
Beautiful to look at, but these solar storms can cause problems too, can't they?
They certainly can. Strong ones like this can potentially disrupt satellites, GPS, even power grids.
And this one happened as the sun's cycle is peaking.
Exactly. We're approaching the peak of the sun's 11-year cycle, so we might expect more of this kind of space weather.
Were there any specific impacts reported from this G4 storm beyond the light show?
Well, the main focus was on potential risks to technology. Satellite comms, GPS accuracy. Farmers were even advised about potential navigation issues. Power grid operators were monitoring closely too. Scientists at NOAA, the Australian Space Weather Forecasting Center, were tracking it. Lots of amazing photos shared online, of course.
Right. Okay, from that cosmic display down to a devastating reality on the ground, northeast India hit by terrible monsoon rains.
Just torrential rain causing severe floods and landslides across the region.
And the human cost has been high.
Tragically high. At least 34 deaths were reported just over the weekend.
Which areas were hit hardest? Any specific incidents mentioned?
States like Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Sikkim.
A wide area.
Very wide. Specific tragedies included a mudslide in Guwahati, Assam, killing 3 from one family. And in Arunachal Pradesh, 7 died when their vehicle was swept away. Just awful stories.
The monsoon is essential for agriculture there, but it brings such danger. Why is that region so vulnerable?
It's partly the geography, very hilly terrain, and infrastructure sometimes struggles with such intense rain.
Right.
Plus, the sources mention climate change is likely playing a role making rainfall patterns more intense, more unpredictable.
What are the wider impacts beyond the fatalities?
Widespread destruction, thousands displaced, infrastructure damage, roads, power lines.
Schools closed, rescue operations.
Yes, all of that. Power outages, blocked roads, schools shut. The Army is involved in rescue efforts. Authorities like the India Meteorological Department, Assam's chief minister, are coordinating.
And the forecast.
Red alerts were issued for more heavy rain. Experts are really calling for better preparedness, more resilient infrastructure.
We've really covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
Absolutely. From Polish politics, U.S. court rulings,
To security incidents, riots, big business deals.
and then these incredible natural events, both celestial and terrestrial. It's quite the mix.
And when you actually dig into the sources like this, you really start to see how these things, they aren't totally separate, are they?
Not at all. They're all pieces of this bigger, interconnected global puzzle.
Exactly. It's kind of fascinating how a specific election result somewhere, or a court decision, or corporate takeover, or even a solar flare,
Yeah.
how these things can ripple outwards and ultimately shape the world you live in day to day.
Which really leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it? How do all these seemingly disconnected events, a political shift here, a financial deal there, a natural disaster somewhere else, how do they actually link up and influence the reality you experience?